Hi everyone, it's Sean from Pulse Markets here today. We've got Justyn Peters with what's happening overseas with food prices, gas prices. It'd be good to touch on that. Also get an update on what's happening with NeuRizer, sort of work out how the company's progressing. This is a very big quarter for you. We're almost towards the end of it, so getting a bit of an update on the significant milestones that you already have achieved at the end of last quarter and this quarter. And also what's happening with the share price. We'll touch on that at the very end. So, Justyn, welcome and thanks for coming today.
Good morning, Sean, and thanks. Great to be here today and great to have a chat about quite a few things. I'm actually quite excited to go through the issues because it's a good opportunity to let everyone know sort of what is happening in the macro world of urea and energy, but also what's happening with NeuRizer, where we are, what we've done and what we're about to do. And answer the tough questions as well at the end. So thanks for your time this morning, and let's get into it.
Great, thanks, Justyn. Again, okay, food prices globally. I mean, I just went to supermarket this morning, and yeah, pretty much got bent over. But what's happening with them globally from your point of view that you can see being in the market?
Look, Sean, there's a lot of variables within this. So, for instance, if you go to your supermarket here, and there'll be certain foods. So strawberries were $9 a punnet only a couple of months ago. They're now under $3 a punnet. That's not really related to the international issues. It's more to do with the fact that we've had flooding on the eastern coast and those sorts of issues, right? So what we're seeing in the supermarket is often a logistics issue rather than an ability to be able to grow, or as a result of the energy crisis that's going on, even though we do have a mini version of that within Australia. What's really interesting is if you have a look at where the food issues in the world are going to come up in the next 12 months, and I think you'll see a lag time, but certainly you're going to start seeing some major food issues and crises starting to occur. And the reason for that is this. It's really quite simple. If you have a look at urea, the market for nitrates and anything to do with nitrogen, it's basically created or made from a gas. Okay, it's made from, whether it's natural gas or syngas. That's basically how this particular product is made. It is needed by farmers to put nitrogen in the soil, and it can impact the amount of food that they can produce, wheat or barley, up to 80%. If they don't put urea into the ground, they don't put nitrogen into the ground. And if you look at the world prices on urea, they're going ballistic at the moment. And some of the numbers are really quite scary, and I'll go into them in a sec. So firstly, China is not exporting urea. China was one of the largest exporter of nitrogen, ammonia, and urea. They have stopped doing that, and they've stopped doing it for food security reasons. And that is that they want to allocate their urea to their crops and their product to ensure that their people have food. So food security has kicked in there. How long that lasts for, no one knows. They might increase their production, but I doubt it. If you then have a look at the fact that urea is made with gas, you take China out of the mix, and you have a look at the Henry Hub prices for gas in the US. I was in New York only 4 or 5 weeks ago, and I was astounded that it hit $8. $8 an MMBTU, which is roughly a gigajoule. If you translate that to Australian dollars, that's around about $11 or $12 per gig in America. All right. The Henry Hub price had been idling along at about $2.50 to $3 for about 5 years. It has now tripled from where it was. And it's not going to come down quickly. Once again, that means if urea is made from gas, then the input costs on that have tripled now for urea, and then it has that flow-on effect to farmers. But where the action is in Europe, and it's really interesting. This is where the game change is occurring. And it's funny because all the planets are aligning for us. All the problems that are being caused to everyone else just makes it better and better for us, because it means that we end up with a product that meets food security and sovereignty issues. But more importantly, we can just increase our margins and profitability. It just gets better and better for us at the moment. So if you have a look at Europe, okay, it's incredible. Germany, Netherlands, UK, Poland, Belgium, France, Italy, Romania, Hungary, and Lithuania have all reduced their urea manufacturing by over 50% since the start of the year. Gas prices in Europe, incredible. January the 22nd this year, it was $25 US an MMBTU. That is roughly $35 Australian per gigajoule of gas. We were used to paying $4 to $6 to $7 for that in Australia. It's now sitting at $12 and moves on the spot price pretty dramatically. But they've gone in Europe from $25 a gigajoule to $92 as of the 1st of August this year. Right? Incredible increase in price. If you have a look at urea and ammonia prices, ammonia was $700 to $800 a tonne on the 20th of January 22. It is now $3,000 per tonne. So you find your ammonia, which is the building block for urea, has now gone up 4 times. If you look at the urea prices, they've gone from $700 to $800 a tonne to $2,000 a tonne. So your gas prices have skyrocketed. You have the Russian-Ukraine crisis causing this in the main, right, which does not look like it's going to be resolved quickly. So you're starting to see some amazing things going on with regards to pricing. So what happens? You have an energy crisis, which means that you then have an increase in your urea price. You have nitrogen increased prices. Then that means that the only people that can afford to put down urea are the first world countries, essentially, other than being subsidized by a government. So India, for instance, will regulate quite heavily urea prices coming into India, right? But then that leads to a food issue, and that is that if your crops, right, are starting to be dramatically reduced because you're not putting urea down, then there's a food crisis worldwide. And everyone knows what's going to happen when there's a food crisis, and that is that first world countries have got the money and discretional spending to be able to ensure that they do that. It's your third world countries that are going to really, really be in trouble. And there's nothing new. There's nothing I'm saying that's any different than anyone else. The World Health Organization, the UN, have come out with these statements recently. If you have a look at what's happened in Sri Lanka, with Sri Lanka having that catastrophic fall in government just recently, that was largely caused by debt, but also by a food shortage, which was caused by the fact that they couldn't get fertiliser for their crops. So you're starting to see this knock-on effect going on everywhere. Okay, so how does that help us? Well, as a company, it's fantastic. As a part of being part of the global world, it's pretty scary. If you have a look at England at the moment, electricity prices for businesses have gone up 9 times. Right, but there's plenty of evidence to support what I'm saying. Gas has gone up almost that amount as well, and you are getting businesses now folding everywhere in England because they cannot afford electricity prices. And this is always, or primarily, because of the fact that the Russian gas issue has now come home to bite, right? And what's scary about this is we are now heading into a European winter, right? And you are going to see some very serious decisions being made. You're going to see splintering in the EU about who stops buying Russian gas, who Russia will sell it to, whether it's paid in rubles. We're going to see a lot of very interesting decisions made by individual countries in the next 3 to 6 months. And whether that means on a long-term basis that Russia will not be able to sell gas, or when it comes back online, other industries have replaced that, remains to be seen. But we have no idea where it's going, and it's pretty scary at the moment. For us, it's great. We sit back and go, okay, gas prices go up, but the gas we have at NeuRizer at Lee Creek, price doesn't go up. Urea goes up, our cost doesn't go up, so our margin increases. So whilst all this is panicking going on around the world, we're just in a position where it just makes our economics look better and better and better. So it's a pretty scary world, but a pretty good one for us at the moment.
Okay, wow, that was, I think you answered about 10 of the questions I had for you there. So it's a very good, I mean, it's not a good synopsis when you really get down to it. It's actually quite scary, as you said. But being a shareholder in NeuRizer, which obviously we've just seen Daelim become recently, it does look like a good time to own shares in fertiliser manufacturing, urea manufacturing company. Just moving on from that horrible theme that we just went over there, which obviously bodes well. Daelim, I think they've done about 4 or 5 things with you in the last couple of months. And I mean, how's that relationship going? I mean, they're now almost 10% shareholder. They've doing the feed, BFS and EPC. They've arranged 70% funding, done 50% offtake. I mean, it's just huge. How's the relationship?
Look, it's interesting, Sean. Originally, I had never had anything to do with Daelim. Our company had never had anything to do with Daelim. And we were very solidly wedged with our Chinese partners, the people who'd been dealing with in China for years. And it became pretty clear to us that even if China wanted to be heavily involved in the project, there were going to be limitations from FIRB and from different issues within the Australian and the China-Australia relationship. I think that what we ended up doing is we looked around the world for a partner to replace them, and it had to be a partner that ticked a whole range of boxes, and Daelim ticked all those boxes. So we started our process with them, with a heads of agreement. A lot of skeptics were out there on an HOA on the EPC contract. We ended up with a heads of agreement on the offtake agreement. Once again, a lot of skeptics. However, they've been made to eat their words on the criticism they had with the Daelim choice. What was interesting about Daelim is we had no idea how important this relationship was going to be, right? And it's just exceeded our expectations continually, and will continue to do so, I might add. So you have a look at it. We signed an EPCC contract, and what does that mean? Well, an EPC, anyone can sign an EPC contract. We're paying them money. Contractors will do it. The difference, of course, is that a lot of those big contractors will not deal with small companies. It takes up too much time. It doesn't give them a decent return. It has a risk profile to it with the small companies to get it across the line. So it's often difficult to get them to play. But I like to look at the last C when we made that announcement with them. It was an EPCC contract. So what does that mean? The C has meant a lot of things to us. Collaborative is the first. These guys have been collaborative from day one with us, worked with us, been in our offices. We've been in their offices, and have developed a relationship. And when they came out to Australia and made their statements about wanting to be a partner and everything was going well with the BFS, it was a great comment to hear from Daelim. But more importantly, the proof's in the pudding. Things have flowed from that. Commissioning. We didn't want a construction. We wanted a commissioning company that could actually commission the site. Right? If you have a look at credibility, we needed a company with credibility. We're sitting in front of fund managers around the world. We're sitting in front of major funds talking about financing of the whole project. The fact that they are there as the EPC contractor gives them huge comfort in who we are. Capability. They've done heaps of them. They've done these before. It is not unusual for them. And then finally, their contacts, which have been incredibly important. So who are their contacts? Well, our licensing one for ammonia is KBR. Our licensing partner for urea is Stanley Carbon. Right? They all have a relationship with Daelim, and then the Korean banks for the funding. And that is because Daelim is such a large company with a great reputation and solid foundation that with them and us going together to the banks that we're talking to, we get treated very differently as opposed to someone coming in at a small level. If you have a look at the offtake agreement was incredibly important. And that was that, firstly, internally for the company, it was important too, I might add. One of the reasons for that was that we knew that Daelim had gone through a very extensive DD process, not on us, but on the international market on urea. And we're very comfortable with the fact that they could take that 500,000 tonne from us and have no problems moving that on for a profit around internationally. So it showed that our business model was right there. It was also really important because they know as well as we did that that offtake agreement would help us in securing finance, but also credibility issue as well, in that we were telling the market, we were going to get an offtake agreement, and people were pushing, when's that offtake agreement coming? When is it coming? When is it coming? The share price will run once we get an offtake agreement. You get an offtake agreement for pretty well over $2 billion. It's incredible when you think that through. It's a binding take or pay contract. It's for, 5 years plus another 5 years. We can extend it longer than that, but just on those numbers alone, for the first 5 years at current $800 price, that's a $2 billion contract. Right? It's incredible. $2 billion we've locked in on a take or pay. So we told the market we were going to do it, and we did it. Then we said, look, we're going to get a strategic investor to come in. So we've got a strategic investor. Daelim have come in and bought 10% of the company. They've done that because they have confidence in what we're doing. I can assure you that the board of Daelim doesn't want to be embarrassed by buying into a company that's not going to make it. I can assure you they're not going to sign an offtake agreement with a company they don't believe can make urea at the prices we say we can make it at. And we now have a director on the board. Right, so our board now has been strengthened with one of the vice presidents from Daelim who's come on board, who has extensive experience in EPC contracting. is a great guy, and the level of experience he'll bring to the company is huge. And we did that for several reasons, but one of them was that we acknowledged, and we'd been told many times by our investors and shareholders, that we need to strengthen the board, and we will continue to do so, I might add. But we brought him on as someone who knew about the contracting, who had been there before, done these projects, and brought that level of expertise to the company, and professionalism as well. So that relationship with them has just kept on going. And then the final sort of steps will be looking at CCS. Daelim already do carbon capture in a career. So we're dealing with a company here that's already done it. It's not in an R&D phase. It's not pie in the sky. It's not greenwashing. This company has done it, right? And of course, the director on our board actually heads up their CCS division within Daelim. So as I said, that relationship is an incredible relationship. And we had no idea to the extent it was going to move through, right, when we first started with them. And it's just worked. And it's been a lot of hard work, and there are a lot of people on both sides of the companies, ours and theirs, that have worked tirelessly to keep that relationship on track, at foot, and working well. And this is fundamental to our success, this relationship with Daelim.
That's fantastic, mate. I've always thought, or since I met them when I was in Adelaide, I've always thought they're going to be important. They just keep showing their importance.
Yeah.
I had a look at your presentation that I think was out on the 5th of July from memory. And I just had a look at the timelines that you've got sitting there. There's several sections. One's to do with the strategic partners funding, and then you've got a lot of things happening with stage one and the BFS and the feed. Could we just go through those three sections just briefly and just make sure that we're on track with the stage?
We're definitely on track.
So stage one, you've got drilling, monitoring wells, power plant infrastructure, 3D seismic, and EIS. How are they all going?
If you went out to site, Sean, you would find a lot of work going on up there. We've got the drill rigs up there working during the drilling program. The 3D seismic, incredibly important for us to get done, has been shot. So we and is being shot at the moment. So when we get that, we have the information that has to be data processed.
Shot's a good thing, isn't it, in this case?
It's what?
Shot's a good thing?
Yes. Okay, so
one of my first cars hit was shot, and that certainly wasn't a good thing.
No, this is important for the 3D process, but extremely important that we get that done. The generators are at site. We're pretty proud of those generators being built for us out at site. We want to get them connected once we've got the drilling and we've got everything else done. And we've got stage one EIS that was submitted, and we're expecting approval for that quite soon. And that's within our license. So we have that petroleum license. Then for each of those stages, you submit on either an EIS or an ERR, depending on what the government wants. And then you get your approval for that particular level of the process. We're expecting that this quarter. We've got feed underway at the moment. It's a scary process, I might add, and the reason it's scary is there's nothing cheap in what we're doing. Drilling is not cheap. 3D is not cheap. Feed is not cheap. The amount of engineering work that goes into a feed is extraordinary. So when you have companies like Daelim and companies like KBR, which are huge companies, and Stammy Carbon as well, those companies, right, put a lot of engineering work and time into the feed process. It's that front end engineering design. It's not cheap, and it's scary for me, and it's scary a lot of the times because we see the bills coming in and out from these groups, but it means we're progressing, and it means we're actually delivering rather than just simply talking about doing it. So we've got the feed. Feed's well underway. We expect feed to be finished by the end of this year. I keep pushing hard for early. I know that Phil Pitt's pushing hard for it to be earlier, but we want the feed done, but we can't rush it. As I said, engineering is a detailed process. It's not simply something off the shelf. There are things that differ. There's a different gas stream. We're using UCG gas rather than natural gas. That puts different inputs into the process. You have different ambient temperatures. So, if you're doing it in China where it freezes, then the engineering requirements are very different than when you're sitting out there at 45 or 50 degrees sitting up at Lee Creek on a hot day. And they change it. So, initially when I looked at it, I thought, oh, look, these guys have done 20 or 30 or 40 of these. They just press print on their computer. Out comes all the engineering data, and we can put the feed together and get it over and done with quickly. And it just doesn't work like that, because everything that we do is different at the front end, feeds into a different set of engineering requirements for the ammonia, which then leads to a different set of requirements for the urea. It's a process we just can't rush, and I have to leave it in the hands of the experts. And these guys are the experts. So we have that. Now, for want of a better word, when feed is done, that feeds into the BFS, right? Because what that does is it tightens us from, your plus or minus 50% costings in a pre-feed study, and then in a fees, you get down to about 30%. It has to be down to plus or minus 10%, right? Once we get to that BFS position. And that can't be done until the feed's finished, so that we know exactly the costings for all the equipment that changes within that process. But we've got the BFS going very well. We're dealing with Nexant, we're dealing with KBR, Stamby Carbon, Daelim and Nexant on this process. We've got our own people up in Korea working on the BFS with them. We're not seeing any problems with it. As I said to a few fund managers I've sat in front of, we expect that there will be a slight increase in some of the costings. If you have a look at it, the cost of steel has gone up, the cost of labour has gone up as well since we first started. But then equally, it hasn't doubled or tripled, whereas our urea prices have doubled and tripled. So we're comfortable with that margin still protected and safe, but we would expect, a cost increase within what we've seen from the PFS to the BFS. But it's an independent process, so we don't interfere with it. We just have to wait and see what comes through with that. We have recently had the infrastructure out at Lee Creek transferred to us. Huge buildings. If you have a look at the announcement, you can see the size of those buildings and the level of infrastructure that's at that site. And it is quite dramatic and it is quite impressive. And when you just put an announcement out without the photo, it's very hard to gauge how big it is and how important it is. We already have our storage facilities there. We had 2 of the large sheds there. When I say large sheds, that's probably a bit of an understatement, but we can store up to 300,000 tonne of urea at site. The ablution blocks, admin blocks, maintenance blocks, they're all there. That saves us, depending on how you want to cost it, anything between $60 and $100 million, right? So straight away, we now have that at site. So we can go straight into the admin blocks and the office blocks and the food blocks and the ablution blocks, and it's there. We don't have to build it. We've worked that through with the state government. We're working the exact same process through with them on the transfer of the rail line from Lee Creek to Port Augusta. Once again, incredibly important. And that process will allow us to operate that train line. All right, once again, a huge savings. And yes, there will be some money that needs to be spent on certain upgrades, or there will be money that needs to be spent in maintenance of the site of the rail lines as well. But certainly much, much, much cheaper, an order of magnitude cheaper than building one. And it's certainly a lot better than trucking any product down. And one of the things in one of our PowerPoint displays on the investor side of things, one of those slides you can see shows the importance of Port Augusta to the distribution arm. And that is that we can come down the train line to Port Augusta, and then it's a centrally located distribution area, whether we want to go west, which we don't really, or we go east, and we have that full range of options there. So we're doing that and working with the government on that at the moment. We have an exclusive period for about 6 months to have that finalised with them, and we're going through a very clear process with them to obtain the rail line. That's something we're pretty excited about as well. We're in discussion with several parties at the moment on funding, and that funding is for the whole project, right? And so once our feed is done, once our BFS is done, at the same time, the executive working through the funding process so that we can go to the board with a full package of feed, BFS and funding for the project. So an FID decision will be made by the board. Okay, so how does that look at the moment for us? How does funding look? Because everyone will sit back and go, oh, great story. You've done this, but sort of we don't believe it until you've got your funding package in. Well, we know we're going to get it in, so the market's going to recognise this sooner or later because we absolutely know we will get funding. So we have partners or people we're actually talking to at the moment on full project funding. We're talking majors. We're not talking fly-by-nights. We're not talking tire kickers. We are talking to majors at this and some advanced discussions on full project funding of the project. We're talking to several parties about funding the 30% gap, right? So that if we can secure the 70% through the Daelim Korean banks process, that we've got to fund that 30%. So what are we looking at? That is a strategic partner. And we're not looking at one strategic partner here. We're looking at 3 or 4 that we're talking to at the moment that can all afford to pay in and buy into the project, and we've then funded the other 30%. We'll have that done before FID. We have to, because we can't go to FID without it. We've got another option. I mean, we can fund against the offtake agreement. So we can do that, or if we need to another offtake and fund against that. We're talking to a party at the moment about funding against a royalty. So, for instance, they would take $10 or $20 a tonne out of the production that we're doing and fund that 30% for us. We're talking to a party about that at the moment. We're talking to the major players. We expect to have all of this finalised and done with that feed and with that BFS. So it's an incredibly busy 6 months ahead for us at the moment.
Fantastic. It's not a long time, really, is it? The end of next quarter is in a couple of weeks. Then you've got Christmas 3 months away from that, and the beginning of next year. So yeah, very exciting time to watch.
You're right, Sean. You're right, Sean. 6 months is not a long time. When you've got KPIs you've got to deliver on, 6 months can often be a very, very short period of time as well. But, we've been working hard at this for years now. The company has been in existence as it currently is structured for about 7 years, but we've only been down that urea path for the last 3. And that was that it took us a while to go through a feasibility process to work out what was the best outcome for our product. So, with syngas, was it power? Was it going to be methanol? Was it going to be pipeline gas? Was it going to be ammonia, or was it going to be ammonia and urea? Is it going to be hydrogen? What were those things? It took us a while through the feasibility process to sort them out. So we've been going pretty hard on this urea side of things now for the last 3 years. It was interesting when I was in New York recently. One of the questions was asked was, are you one of these companies that's jumping on the bandwagon? Whether it's graphite or lithium or gold or uranium or gas, or urea, are you one of these companies? And I said, look, we started this urea process and identified it 3 years ago, well before any of this stuff hit. So it was just interesting that, as I said, the stars have aligned for us. We didn't have the foresight to know that urea was going to go up 3 times. We didn't know that Russia was going to invade Ukraine. We didn't know that China was going to stop exporting. We didn't know that Henry Hub gas was going to go up 3 times. We didn't know that food security was going to be such an important thing that governments are now going out of their way to secure food and urea. We had no idea that was happening when we made the decision. We just worked out that for our gas, this was the best product we could make with the best margin. It was a clear winner when we looked at all the products, and we took that path. And since then, all these things have happened.
Yeah, just sort of falling into your lap, whether it be good or bad. But it's good for you, but bad for the rest of the world, I guess. You did touch on one thing earlier. You have been speaking with fund managers. You have been getting out and about, speaking with people. Yep. I've definitely known you've been in Europe. I know you've been in New York. You've been all around the place, actually. What's the feedback you're getting? I mean, when I'm looking at it myself, I'm thinking, wow, I kind of think you said it, the market's just not believing you're going to get the financing. So that's why your share price is sort of lackluster, to put it in a nice way.
I think it's a complex question. It was an easy question to be an easy solution. I think it's complex. There's the reactions we've had with the fund managers, portfolio managers. I've met with 2 of the largest in the world when I was in New York just recently. No issue with the macro. That is that they have no doubts whatsoever that gas prices are in the upward move they are, and will be there for a while. Have no idea how long Russia's going to be in play on gas issues. Totally understand the macro food security side of things. And we're very complimentary, I might add, of what we've done. For some of them, it's still a little early. For some of those fund managers, we're still a little early. And that is that, you sit there and you might be 3 years out from a dividend position. And a lot of those, their mandates don't allow them to go that far out on So their comments are, you've done amazing things. Come back, when you're after BFS or after FID, and then we'll talk. Of course, for companies like us, it's a pain in the butt that's what you get told by some of them, because you say, by the time I've done FID, I've got
it's their
finance that you
mandates.
don't need. Yeah.
But it's their mandates. They simply can't do it.
Yeah. And then you'll get others that have different requirements. The level of meetings that have been taken has been surprisingly good, I might add, because certainly in Europe, there's a lot of reticence to take meetings, not just from us, I might add. It's internationally, this is an issue. But in America, they're a bit more adventurous. They were all worried about inflation at one point. They've gotten over that. So, the issues we've had there have been really good. The reception has been really good. Share price is something that I find eternally frustrating. And that is that we keep ticking boxes and we don't get recognized by the market for that. And it is frustrating. And we've looked at different ways through that and trying to resolve it. But I think it's going to come down to really one thing. And that is that, we were told, get a strategic partner, and then, the share price will move. Then get your investor in, then it'll move. Then get your BFS done, the share price move. Get your offtake agreement was a big one that, the time and time again, we were told that would move. And I think ultimately this comes down to the fact that people still want to see that funding agreement in place. And that is that once we get finance, then we've ticked all those boxes. We've got our offtake, we've got our strategic partner, we've got finance in place. We've got the government approvals working with us. Everything sort of then is laid out. And I think the market will wake up once we get to that point. So Phil and I and the executive are just working flat out on the funding package now. That's where all of our energy goes into, while Christian and his team make sure that the drilling is getting done properly, make sure that the work on stage 1's getting done properly, making sure that the work with the government, right, is getting done properly, right, whilst the rest of the executive are working on funding. This is the one we got to nail to get us home. And it's nice because it's only one thing we got to nail now. It's not 5 or 6 KPIs now, it's one thing, funding.
Fantastic. Well, good luck with that. And you obviously, as you've said, you're working on that now, so that when we get to FID early next year, you'll be able to make that decision and announce that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when we secure funding, it would be announced to the market anyway. It's a material thing we'd have to disclose once we secured funding, but that will be pre-FID anyway. So
we don't have to wait 6 months for that, in other words, because that's a nice sort of tidbit there.
Well, hopefully not. Hopefully not, but we're not waiting for BFS to be finished to then go for a funding proposal. You'll go for your funding package depending on which group you go to and which one you put together. It will be contingent on the BFS stacking up, for instance, right? So that you'll have funding that says X, contingent with some preconditions in it. Not on all of them, I might add, but a couple of them will go that way if we want it to, which means that theoretically we come up with an announcement on funding well before FID. But once again, things take time. You have no idea. When COVID got in the way and you couldn't meet face-to-face on important meetings, it made life very, very difficult. What happens in the next 3 or 6 months with what happens in the Middle East or what happens in Ukraine and Russia, we have no idea. But all things being equal, we would hope to be able to have that, finalised, in the next few months before FID.
Okay, thanks, Justyn. With NeuRizer to Australia, how important is it to Australia's food security moving forward?
Well, I think the project is extremely important, and that is that from a time point of view, we are well advanced. We're moving along. We are very well advanced in the project. The time for us between, where we are now and delivery of the project is not a long period of time anymore. So we become, a provider or manufacturer of 1 million tonne per year in our first round. That's nearly half of Australia's fertiliser requirements, right? So you have it actually sitting here in Australia, being manufactured in Australia, not being held ransom of international prices or for logistics. I think from the South Australian government point of view, it's extremely important. And that is that our location, we're a regional area. We're not located in the city, an industrial area, Port Adelaide. We are located out in the country in a region. And what that means is you have jobs, you have income, you have spending, you have support services that are required for our project out at Lee Creek, right? Which is extremely important, right? Because if you have a look at where we are at Lee Creek, that's on the way to Moomba. It's in the middle of South Australia nearly. It's 550 kilometres north of Adelaide. We have towns nearby that will grow as a result of that. The South Australian government gets revenue in from the royalty process that we have to give. But just the input into a region is huge. If you're looking at, a workforce of a couple of thousand people, that's massive. And for a town like Lee Creek, which was the most, easily the largest regional town out through that area, the support we actually provide, and we already do, is important for the South Australian government and for the community. And we want to be a household name in South Australia. We want to be known like the Elders and like other companies in Santos in South Australia. We want to be known as a company that puts back into our community, that supports the people in the region, that provides money to the state government, and is a good citizen. A good corporate citizen is something we want to be with the government. And they recognise this. It's pretty clear that when you look at, if I outlined, the 15 to 20 things they've done for us over the last 2 or 3 years, it's pretty clear that the government sees this as a major project as well, right? And that they are doing everything within their means, within their systems and processes to support us. So we're looking forward to some announcements in the near future about exactly that point, that we are considered an important project in South Australia.
Fantastic. Well, Justyn, is there anything else you want to say before we get going? Or?
No, I think we've pretty well covered everything. It's not the last one we're going to do, Sean. So, I'm looking forward to, some announcements going out to market on the progress we've made over the next few weeks. And then, if something of real importance and substance comes through, let's do another one and let the market
Always.
know. Yeah.
Happy to.
All right.
Anytime.
Thanks for your time, Sean. And I'll catch up soon.
Yeah, look forward to it, mate. Take care.
See you, mate. Bye.